The morning sun, a benevolent spotlight, cast long, dancing shadows of elm leaves across Mrs. Gable's impeccably manicured lawn. A gentle breeze, redolent with the scent of freshly cut grass and blooming petunias, stirred the lacy curtains in her kitchen window. Mrs. Gable, a woman of 61 years whose silver hair was always neatly coiled into a bun, hummed a tuneless melody as she carefully watered her prized geraniums. Their crimson petals, vibrant against the terracotta pots, seemed to radiate warmth, mirroring the quiet contentment in her heart. Each plant received a precise measure from her chipped ceramic watering can, a ritual she'd observed every sunny morning for decades. The rhythmic plink-plink of water hitting soil was a soothing counterpoint to the distant chirp of sparrows. She paused, wiping a bead of perspiration from her brow with the back of a gloved hand, and admired her handiwork. Her garden was her sanctuary, a living tapestry woven with care and dedication. For 58 of her 61 years, this house, with its sturdy brick facade and welcoming porch swing, had been her anchor. She'd seen Elm Street evolve, witnessed families grow and move on, celebrated countless sunrises, and endured her share of stormy nights within its comforting walls. Change, though inevitable, had always been a gradual, gentle tide, never a sudden tsunami. A cheerful, booming voice cut through the stillness. "Morning, Martha! Geraniums looking splendid as ever." Mrs. Gable looked up, her smile instant and genuine. Mr. Henderson, her neighbor from number 14, was standing by his picket fence, a mug of steaming coffee in his hand. His silver hair, though less carefully tended than hers, caught the morning light, and his eyes, a startling shade of blue, crinkled at the corners as he smiled. He was a man who exuded an easygoing charm, a quality Mrs. Gable had always found reassuring. "Good morning, Arthur," she replied, her voice soft but clear. "They're enjoying this lovely weather." He took a long sip of his coffee. "Couldn't agree more. Perfect day for a spot of gardening, eh? Might even tackle those roses later myself." He gestured vaguely towards his own, somewhat less thriving rose bushes. Mr. Henderson had moved into the house next door 10 years ago, a decade that had solidified a comfortable, neighborly rapport. He was always quick with a friendly greeting, ready to offer help with a heavy grocery bag, or share a laugh over a particularly stubborn weed. Mrs. Gable had come to rely on his presence, a steady, good-natured fixture in her quiet life. He'd helped her fix a leaky tap once, and she, in turn, often left him a slice of her famous apple pie. It was a simple, uncomplicated friendship, built on mutual respect and the shared understanding of what it meant to live on Elm Street. "Well, you certainly have the weather for it," she said, bending to prune a yellowing leaf from a petunia. "Don't overdo it, though. You know how those thorns can be." He chuckled, a warm, rolling sound. "Duly noted, Martha. You take care now." He raised his mug in a salute before turning back towards his own house, his gait a little springier than one might expect for a man his age. Mrs. Gable watched him go, a sense of peace settling over her. The sun warmed her back. The scent of damp earth filled her nostrils, and the gentle rhythm of her daily life felt profoundly right. She thought of the little things, the shared waves, the brief chats over the fence, the unspoken understanding that came with years of living side by side. It was a comforting thought, a testament to the enduring bonds of community. She finished watering the last pot, placing her watering can precisely where it belonged, ready for tomorrow's ritual. Nothing, she mused, could truly disturb the quiet harmony of Elm Street. The morning sun, usually a comforting golden wash across Mrs. Gable's kitchen, felt almost aggressive, illuminating the dust motes dancing in its beams. She'd already tended her prize-winning petunias, their vibrant pinks and purples, a cheerful counterpoint to the street's hush. Now cradling a steaming mug of Earl Grey, she settled into her window seat, ready for the gentle unfolding of her day. That's when it caught her eye. Parked askew across the curb, partially obscuring Mr. Henderson's immaculate lawn, sat a truck she'd never encountered. No delivery van or moving truck. This was a battered dark green pickup, its paint streaked and faded. a makeshift tarp concealing something bulky in its bed. An anomaly in their serene cul-de-sac. Her gaze lingered, a faint crease forming between her brows. Mr. Henderson was meticulous. Such a vehicle seemed a rude blot on the neighborhood's tidy tableau. Moments later, two burly men emerged from the side of Mr. Henderson's house. Thick-armed and clad in faded work shirts, they moved with a silent, determined efficiency that struck Mrs. Gable as odd. They exchanged grunts, not words, as they maneuvered large, unmarked cardboard boxes from beneath the truck's tarp. The packages looked surprisingly heavy, judging by the strain on their faces, devoid of branding or labels that might hint at their contents. One by one, the boxes vanished into the side entrance of Mr. Henderson's house, the door to his garage, a space she knew he reserved almost exclusively for his perfectly polished classic car. It was an unusual procession. Mr. Henderson, a man of refined tastes, typically ordered from high-end boutiques or specialized dealerships. These plain, utilitarian containers and the rough-looking men handling them seemed utterly incongruous with his polished persona. Mrs. Gable watched for a good 10 minutes, her tea growing cold. She estimated 6 or 7 imposing packages disappeared before the men re-entered the truck. One glanced, almost furtively, toward her house before starting the engine. The old pickup rumbled to life, belching a cloud of dark exhaust, then vanished as abruptly as it had appeared, leaving behind only the ghost of diesel and a lingering sense of unease. A flicker of curiosity ignited within her. What could Mr. Henderson be receiving that demanded such discretion and unconventional couriers? It wasn't like him to be so secretive, or to associate with such, unconventional characters. Her mind, however, ever inclined toward charity, swiftly dismissed the nascent disquiet. Perhaps a surprise for his wife, or a new, unannounced hobby. Mr. Henderson, after all, was always so pleasant, so charming, with his ready smile and endless stream of pleasantries. It was probably nothing. Still, as she turned from the window, a small, unshakable question mark hovered in the quiet air of her kitchen. A tiny discord in the symphony of her peaceful morning. The morning sun, usually a comforting presence, felt oddly insistent as Mrs. Gable stepped onto her back porch. The crisp air, bearing the scent of damp earth and late-blooming roses, typically beckoned her into the garden. Her daily ritual commenced with a slow, appreciative survey, a mental inventory of burgeoning life and lingering frost damage. Her gaze, familiar with every twist and turn of her landscape, naturally drifted towards the ancient oak, its boughs embracing the heart of her sanctuary. But something was amiss. The space beneath the oak, customarily graced by the elegant curve of her late husband's birdbath, was starkly, inexplicably vacant. Her heart, a steadfast rhythm for 61 years, skipped a beat. Her breath hitched, snaring in her throat like a stubborn burr. She blinked, a quick, desperate succession, as if wishing to recalibrate her vision. The birdbath, a 30th anniversary gift from Arthur, was no mere garden ornament. Its mottled gray stone, polished by decades of weather and countless tiny bird feet, embodied a lifetime of shared moments. She could still picture Arthur's beaming face as he presented it, a clumsy bow tied around its pedestal. It was where robins splashed through summer, where jays squawked over territorial disputes, and where, only last week, she'd watched a tiny wren sip delicate drops. It stood as a testament to enduring affection, a symbol of their tranquil union. And now, it had simply vanished. A cold shiver traced its way up her spine. This wasn't a fallen leaf, or a misplaced trowel. This was an absence, a gaping void where something precious had been. Her initial reaction wasn't anger, but a profound, disorienting bewilderment. Perhaps Arthur had moved it? A fleeting thought, instantly dismissed. Arthur had been gone for 5 years. Such a fanciful notion had never crossed her mind before. She took a hesitant step, then another, her slippers crunching on the gravel path. The garden's silence, usually so soothing, now felt oppressive, as if it too lamented the missing centerpiece. As she drew nearer, the bare patch of earth where the birdbath had stood became undeniably clear. There were no signs of disturbance, no overturned soil, no broken fragments of stone. It was as if it had simply dematerialized. "Oh, Arthur," she whispered, her voice reedy and thin. A sharp, unexpected wave of sorrow washed over her. It wasn't just the birdbath, but the intrusion itself, the unsettling realization that something cherished had been taken from her private world. It was a violation of the quiet trust she had always placed in the universe, in her neighbors, in the very fabric of her peaceful existence. She stood there for a long moment, the morning sun now feeling less insistent and more like a harsh spotlight on her confusion. Her usually keen, logical mind scrambled for an explanation. Had the wind carried it away? Preposterous. Had a large animal nudged it over? Unlikely, given its weight and the lack of debris. Perhaps it was a prank. One of the neighborhood children, though none had ever been so audacious. Or perhaps one of the church volunteers, tidying up, had mistaken it for something to be stored? No, that didn't ring true either. The birdbath was an immovable landmark. A new, unfamiliar prickle of unease began to spread through her. This wasn't just a lost item. It was a disruption, a challenge to the very order of her world. For the first time in a very long time, Mrs. Gable felt a genuine flicker of worry, a shadow that threatened to eclipse the gentle calm she so carefully cultivated. The missing birdbath was more than just a physical void. It was an emptiness in the secure landscape of her heart. The morning sun, usually a cheerful harbinger, felt brittle against Mrs. Gable's skin as she stepped onto her porch. Her routine was sacrosanct: a cup of Earl Grey, the morning paper, and then a stroll through her garden. It was her sanctuary, a vibrant testament to years of careful cultivation. Today, however, a stark, gaping void awaited her. Where the blushing bell had stood, a magnificent prize-winning rosebush, famous for its velvety crimson petals and intoxicating perfume, there was now only disturbed earth. A dark, irregular patch of churned soil, raw and exposed, stared up at her like a wound. Not a single bloom, not a thorny stem, not even a stray leaf remained. It was as if the earth had simply swallowed it whole. Mrs. Gable's teacup, still warm in her hand, clattered against the saucer. Her breath hitched. The blushing bell wasn't just any rose. It was the centerpiece of her garden, a legacy from her late husband, a symbol of their enduring love and shared passion. Its absence was a physical blow, a hollowness that echoed the one in her chest. "No," she whispered, the word barely a breath. She hurried across the dew-kissed lawn, her sensible slippers sinking slightly into the damp grass. She knelt, her fingers tracing the ragged edges of the disturbed earth. This wasn't a mischievous squirrel or a particularly hungry deer. This was deliberate. The roots had been expertly severed, the entire plant removed with a precision that spoke of intent, not accident. The initial shock gave way to a cold dread. First, the missing garden gnome, a whimsical, if minor, peculiarity. Now, her prize-winning rose. 2 disappearances, each more significant than the last, within weeks of each other. The benign explanations she'd offered herself for the gnome, a child's prank, a stray animal, evaporated under the harsh reality of the vanished rose. This was no prank. This was something else entirely. Something unsettling. A shiver traced its way down her spine despite the warming sun. Her garden, once a place of solace, now felt vulnerable, exposed. The cheerful chirping of the sparrows seemed to mock her growing unease. She straightened up, her gaze sweeping across her property, then drifting to the meticulously kept lawn next door, Mr. Henderson's pride and joy. She had always prided herself on being a practical woman, not one to jump to conclusions or entertain wild suspicions. But the evidence was mounting, undeniable. The gnome could be dismissed as an anomaly. But the blushing bell? That was a declaration. Someone had taken it. Someone had invaded her private world. A quiet anger, unfamiliar yet potent, began to simmer beneath her composed exterior. She loved her garden, found comfort in its familiar rhythms, and now that comfort was being systematically eroded. She couldn't ignore this. She wouldn't. This wasn't merely a matter of a missing plant, it was a violation. Mrs. Gable walked back to her porch. The image of the empty patch burned into her mind. The thought of confronting anyone filled her with a peculiar mix of apprehension and resolve. But the question of who, and more importantly why, gnawed at her. She needed answers, and she knew exactly where she needed to start looking. Mr. Henderson. He saw everything. He would know. He had to. She clutched her teacup, her knuckles white. It was time to speak to him. The crisp morning air, usually a balm, felt sharp against Mrs. Gable's cheeks as she approached Mr. Henderson's picket fence. His prize-winning petunias, a vibrant splash of fuchsia, seemed to mock the dull ache in her chest. She clutched the worn strap of her gardening apron, a habit that offered small comfort. He was out on his porch, polishing a bird feeder, a picture of domestic tranquility that suddenly seemed staged. "Morning, Arthur," she called, her voice a little more strained than she intended. He looked up, a broad, easy smile spreading across his face, the kind that had always made her feel welcome, safe even. "Eleanor, lovely day, isn't it? Almost too good to be true." He chuckled, a sound that grated on her nerves today. She walked closer, stopping short of his gate. The scent of his pipe tobacco, usually pleasant, now seemed cloying. "Arthur, I need to ask you something." His smile faltered slightly, replaced by a look of mild inquiry. "Of course, Eleanor. Anything at all." She took a deep breath, the words catching in her throat. My vintage watering can. And those antique ceramic planters I just bought at the market. They're gone. From my shed." She watched him intently, searching for any flicker of understanding, any sign of recollection. Mr. Henderson's eyebrows shot up in genuine-looking surprise. "Gone? Eleanor, are you certain? You didn't just misplace them? Sometimes things get shuffled around. You know how it is." He laughed, a light, dismissive sound. "No, Arthur. I'm quite certain," she insisted, her voice gaining a quiet firmness. "I was using the watering can yesterday, and the planters were right there, stacked neatly by the door. Now they're not." He set down the bird feeder, his hands moving to his hips. "Well, that's a terrible shame, Eleanor. Absolutely terrible. Can't imagine who'd do such a thing." He shook his head, a performance of indignation. "You've checked everywhere, I suppose? Under the workbench? Behind the potting soil?" "Everywhere," she confirmed, her gaze unwavering. "And the latch on the shed door? It was broken. Not forced, mind you, but just broken." A subtle shift happened in his eyes then. The easy friendliness receded, replaced by something colder, more calculating. It was fleeting, almost imperceptible, but she saw it. A quick dart to the side, then back to her, an overeager attempt to reestablish the innocent gaze. "Broken, you say? Well, that changes things, doesn't it?" He rubbed the back of his neck. "A break-in, then? Goodness me. I certainly haven't seen anything, Eleanor. Been right here all morning, same as yesterday. Didn't hear a peep?" He offered another reassuring smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. His pupils, usually warm and crinkly at the corners, now seemed flat, almost opaque. A cold knot tightened in Mrs. Gable's stomach. It wasn't just the missing items, it was the hollow ring in his denial, the way his voice had taken on a slightly higher pitch. The comfortable familiarity that had existed between them for years, a trust built on shared garden tips and neighborhood gossip, now felt fragile, on the verge of shattering. She felt a profound sense of unease, a betrayal that seeped into her bones. The quiet street, the chirping birds, even the sunshine, suddenly felt hostile. She had come seeking reassurance and instead found a chilling uncertainty that left her feeling exposed and alone. The morning sun, usually a comforting presence, felt thin and watery through Mrs. Gable's kitchen window. She'd made her usual tea, but the ritual offered no solace. Her mind, a whirlwind of disbelief and nagging suspicion, kept returning to the gnawing emptiness in her shed. She knew she couldn't simply sit and wonder. Answers, however painful, needed to be found. After tidying her kitchen with a determined sort of energy, Mrs. Gable ventured out, the crisp air doing little to settle her unease. Her first stop was Mrs. O'Malley's, 2 houses down, where a vibrant display of petunias spilled from window boxes. Mrs. O'Malley, a woman whose opinions were as strong as her freshly brewed coffee, answered the door, her brow furrowed with concern at Mrs. Gable's drawn face. "Good morning, dear. Everything all right?" Mrs. O'Malley's voice was warm. Mrs. Gable, after a brief, hesitant explanation of her missing tools, asked, "Did you happen to see anything unusual yesterday, Agnes? Any strange vehicles or anything out of the ordinary around the street?" Mrs. O'Malley tapped a thoughtful finger against her chin. "Now that you mention it, no. I was out for most of the afternoon, visiting my sister. Came back just before dinner. The street seemed perfectly quiet then." Her gaze softened. "I'm so sorry, dear. That's just dreadful." Her next stops yielded similar results. Mr. Albright, engrossed in his morning newspaper, hadn't noticed a thing. Mrs. Rodriguez, busy with her grandchildren, recalled only the usual delivery vans. A knot tightened in Mrs. Gable's stomach. Was she imagining things? Had she simply misplaced them, despite her meticulous habits? The thought was almost as unsettling as the alternative. As she walked back towards her house, a small figure on a bright red tricycle pedaled towards her. It was little Timmy, from the pale blue house at the end of the cul-de-sac. His knees pumped with earnest effort, and his sandy hair bounced as he approached. Timmy was a bright, observant boy, often seen exploring the nooks and crannies of their quiet street. "Morning, Mrs. Gable," he chirped, skidding to a halt beside her, his wide blue eyes earnest. "Good morning, Timmy. Enjoying your ride?" Mrs. Gable managed a small smile, though her heart felt heavy. Timmy nodded vigorously. "Yes, I saw you talking to Mrs. O'Malley. Are you looking for something?" His innocent question cut directly to the heart of her worry. "Well, yes, I am, actually," Mrs. Gable admitted, looking down at the small boy. "Some of my gardening tools are missing from my shed. Did you happen to see anything strange yesterday? Perhaps a big truck or a new car on the street?" She didn't hold much hope, but Timmy's presence felt like a small, unexpected comfort. Timmy's brow furrowed in concentration, his gaze drifting towards Mr. Henderson's house next door. "Oh, I did see a big truck," he announced, his voice gaining a confident edge. "It was like a moving truck, but smaller. And it wasn't a normal color. It was all dusty brown." He paused, piecing together his memory. "And Mr. Henderson was putting some boxes in the back. And then he put some long, shiny things in, too. They looked like your rake and that big shovel you use." Mrs. Gable's breath caught in her throat. The dusty brown truck. Long, shiny things. Her rake. Her shovel. A cold wave washed over her, chilling her to the bone. The pieces, once scattered and confusing, suddenly snapped into place with a horrifying clarity. Betrayal, sharp and unexpected, twisted in her gut. From just next door, the clatter of the teacup against its saucer was the only sound in the sudden, suffocating silence of Mrs. Gable's kitchen. Timmy's small voice, so earnest and clear, echoed in her mind. "He said you wouldn't notice, Mrs. Gable. Mr. Henderson. He said it was just a little bit of dirt. A little bit of dirt that had turned her prize-winning rosebush into a withered, dying husk. A little bit of dirt that had poisoned her soil, her garden, her trust." The ache started as a dull throb behind her eyes, spreading quickly to her chest, a hollow, burning sensation she hadn't felt since her husband's passing. Mr. Henderson. Good old Mr. Henderson, who always brought over extra tomatoes from his own garden, who'd helped her fix that stubborn leaky faucet last spring. The man whose cheerful waves and reassuring smiles had been a constant comfort next door for the better part of a decade. How could she have been so blind? So utterly, foolishly naive? Her hands, usually so steady when tending her delicate orchids or kneading dough for her famous apple pie, now trembled uncontrollably. She wrapped them around the warm mug, seeking some solace, but even the familiar warmth felt alien, a lie in a world suddenly turned upside down. The betrayal wasn't just about the roses, though her heart did grieve for their lost beauty. It was about the insidious creep of deceit, the deliberate act of malice from someone she had welcomed into her life, into her quiet, predictable world. At 61, she never thought betrayal would come from just next door, delivered with a smile and a friendly wave. A gust of wind rattled the window panes, mirroring the turmoil within her. Mrs. Gable stared out at her beloved garden, now a graveyard of what-ifs and how-could-is. The vibrant hues of her untouched petunias seemed to mock the barren patch where her roses had once proudly stood. A wave of anger, sharp and unfamiliar, surged through her. It mingled with the hurt, giving her a surprising resolve. She wasn't a fragile old woman to be easily dismissed or taken advantage of. Her quiet life had instilled in her a deep-seated resilience, a quiet strength that now began to assert itself. She pushed herself up from the kitchen table, the wooden chair scraping loudly against the linoleum. Her knees felt weak, but her jaw was set. Timmy's innocent words had been a gift, a painful truth that demanded action. To do nothing would be to allow the betrayal to fester, to allow Mr. Henderson's callous disregard to define her. She walked into the living room, her gaze falling upon the telephone on the small mahogany table. It looked heavier than usual, a monumental task to lift it. Her fingers, still trembling, hovered over the keypad. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. The squad car pulled up slowly, its polished black gleam a stark contrast to the faded paint of Mr. Henderson's clapboard house. Mrs. Gable watched from her porch swing, a knot of apprehension tightening in her stomach. It felt surreal, this official presence on their quiet street, all because of a missing birdbath and a suspicion she'd almost talked herself out of. Two officers emerged, their uniforms crisp, their expressions neutral but attentive. One, a burly man with kind eyes, gave her a reassuring nod before approaching Mr. Henderson's front door. A moment later, Mr. Henderson himself appeared, a picture of genial bewilderment. He wore a slightly rumpled polo shirt, his usual easy smile in place, though Mrs. Gable noticed a flicker of something guarded in his eyes. He greeted the officers with an almost exaggerated cordiality, gesturing expansively towards his property, as if inviting them to admire his pristine lawn. The burly officer, whose name tag read Officer Davies, explained the purpose of their visit with calm professionalism, his gaze unwavering as he spoke of Mrs. Gable's missing garden items. Mr. Henderson's smile didn't falter, but a subtle tremor ran through his hands as he clasped them together. "Missing items?" he repeated, feigning surprise. "Oh, Mrs. Gable, really? I hadn't heard. Well, of course, officers. Feel free to look around. Nothing to hide here." He waved a hand towards his house, and then, almost as an afterthought, towards the detached garage at the side. "Just a bit of gardening equipment and old tools in there, mind you." Officer Davies exchanged a brief glance with his partner, a younger woman named Officer Chen, before heading towards the garage. The air crackled with unspoken tension. Mrs. Gable held her breath, her heart thumping a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She felt a pang of guilt, even as a stronger sense of certainty settled over her. Was she truly doing the right thing, accusing her neighbor? The garage door, a weathered wooden panel, rumbled upward with a protesting groan. Officer Davies stepped inside, followed by Officer Chen. Mrs. Gable strained her ears, hearing only the distant chirping of birds for a moment, then a muffled exclamation from within. Her gaze snapped to Mr. Henderson, who had frozen mid-sentence, his face paling noticeably. Well, Mr. Henderson, Officer Davies, voice boomed from the garage, devoid of its previous geniality. "What do we have here?" The officers reappeared, Officer Davies holding a corner of a large, olive-green tarp. With a swift tug, he revealed the gleaming, chipped porcelain of Mrs. Gable's cherished birdbath. Its pedestal, now scuffed, was unmistakable. Next to it, peeking out from under the same tarp, were the vibrant, crimson blooms of her prize-winning climbing rose, its roots still encased in the soil-filled bucket she'd left it in. The sight sent a wave of relief washing over Mrs. Gable, followed by a sharp stab of indignation. There it was, irrefutable proof. Mr. Henderson stared, his face a mask of abject horror, his feigned innocence completely crumbled. The color drained from his cheeks, leaving them an ashen gray. He stammered, his earlier confidence replaced by a pathetic, choked sound. His eyes darted from the officers to Mrs. Gable, who was now walking purposefully towards the garage, her chin held high. "Mrs. Gable," he blurted out, his voice thin and reedy, I am so terribly sorry. I don't know what came over me. It was a moment of weakness. Please forgive me." He wrung his hands, his gaze fixed on the ground, unable to meet her steady stare. The charm was gone, replaced by the shivering cowardice of a man caught red-handed. The once trusting warmth she'd felt for him evaporated, leaving behind a cold, hard resolve. The morning air, still crisp with the last echoes of dawn, carried the earthy scent of damp soil, hinting at imminent growth. Mrs. Gable, a renewed stiffness in her spine, surveyed the shallow depression where her beloved birdbath had stood. A familiar ache resonated in her shoulders, a lingering testament to recent sleepless nights and emotional turmoil. Yet today, the sensation was different. Less a burden, more an impetus for action. She grasped the smooth, cold ceramic of the birdbath's pedestal, its weight a familiar anchor. With a soft grunt, she nudged it back into its accustomed spot beneath the sprawling oak branches. The gentle murmur of water, poured from her watering can, chimed like a melody of normalcy, a quiet balm for her spirit. A bold robin, undaunted, immediately alighted on the rim, dipping its head for a drink. For the first time in days, a genuine smile softened Mrs. Gable's lips. Her gaze then drifted to the stark emptiness where her prize-winning peace rose had once blossomed. The memory of its vibrant yellow petals, edged with a delicate blush of pink, sent a sharp pang through her chest. It had been more than a flower. It symbolized her meticulous care, her enduring patience. But wallowing in loss wouldn't resurrect it. With renewed resolve, she fetched a fresh specimen from the potting shed, a bare-root hybrid tea, its label promising new dawn. The irony was not lost on her. Kneeling on the yielding earth, she carefully excavated a generous hole, enriching the soil with her own aged compost. As she tenderly settled the fragile roots, a quiet determination took hold within her, too. This was not merely replacing a plant. It was an act of reconstruction, of reclaiming her small corner of the world. Each pat of soil around the new rosebush felt like a deliberate pronouncement. A silent defiance against the disruption that had threatened to uproot her. Later, sipping her tea on the porch swing, its familiar creak, a comforting rhythm, Mrs. Gable watched sunlight stipple through the leaves. The garden, though still bearing subtle scars, was visibly reviving. Her thoughts, however, drifted beyond the familiar confines of her yard, settling instead on Mr. Henderson. The image of his polite smile, his seemingly helpful demeanor, now twisted into something insidious in her recollection. The trust, once so freely given, lay irrevocably shattered, leaving a jagged void. She realized, with a clarity that both stung and liberated, that the man she thought she knew had been a meticulously crafted facade. The betrayal had cut deep, not just into her sense of security, but into her fundamental belief in the decency of her neighbors. Yet, gazing at her resurrected garden, a different emotion began to unfurl within her. It wasn't anger, not precisely, nor was it bitterness. It was a quiet strength, a resilient dignity she hadn't known she possessed. The initial shock and hurt had yielded to a steely resolve. She would be more discerning, certainly, but she would not allow this experience to curdle her spirit. She had faced deceit, confronted unfairness, and she had, in her own understated way, begun to mend what was broken. Life had thrown an unexpected curveball, a betrayal from a next-door neighbor, at an age when she believed such dramas were long past. But she had caught it. She had dusted herself off. And now she knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her bones, that she could handle anything. This newfound strength was not loud or boastful. It was a gentle, persistent hum, like the bees now buzzing around her newly planted rose. It was enough.